friends? Welcome back to another NBA Insider video live stream notebook right here on the one and only Bleacher Report app. My name is Jake Fischer, your resident NBA Insider for all things Bleacher Report. We're coming to you live today, a little after our regular 5 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, October 23rd. I'm a little under the weather. We had some dry cleaning delivery issues, but we are here. We are coming to you, and we have a ton of news and notes to get to from around the NBA where tip-off has occurred. Most teams have already been in live regular season action, but the number one story of the day, of the week, is definitely the news that broke this morning that as of 6 a.m. Eastern time, Terry Rozier, the Miami Heat guard, and Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups were both arrested in a federal gambling probe that totaled 31 arrests, according to the FBI's press conference that took place in downtown Manhattan today. These are two separate probes. So far, Chauncey Billups has only been named as a alleged conspirator in an illegal poker game that took place also with former NBA player and former NBA assistant coach Damon Jones, who his involvement in both the poker game with an alleged poker game with a mafia family and Damon Jones's involvement with tipping games and providing insider information about players' availability and what have you for prop bets, that Damon Jones is one of three people that are connecting these two incidents and allegations across four major U.S. crime families. And this, to me, brought back plenty of memories from the early morning sweeping arrests to the very celebratory press conference from FBI officials, all the way to the director of NYPD today, to the Adidas college basketball scandal back from 2015, 2016, 2017. Very similar just tone and tenor of how all this transpired. But for what is relevant of what is to come next, the NBA has put out a statement that both Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups are going to be on leave until this investigation gets concluded. They're cooperating with the authorities. The Blazers said that. The Miami Heat said that. And Portland has already announced Tiago Splitter as the Blazers' interim head coach moving forward. As Mr. Mason says, what does this mean for the Blazers? New coach soon. Chauncey Billups just signed a new contract extension, so he was definitely someone that the general manager, Joe Cronin, wanted to be a part of this organization for the present and the future. Obviously, all of that is completely up in the air now as we await what will be the next developments for all this to unfold. They are both, Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, they were expected to be indicted in court in Oregon and in Orlando, respectively, because Terry Rozier was in Orlando last night with the Miami Heat. He did not play. He was eligible to play. He was arrested on the road as part of the team's traveling party and taken into custody as part of all of this. Now, Terry Rozier's involvement in all this, according to the indictment that we obtained here at Bleacher Report, that I have still yet to fully parse through and review. I will do that over and over again over the weekend and what have you. But his involvement stems back to the original March 2023 incident when Terry Rozier was with the Charlotte Hornets that the league already investigated and found no wrongdoing. So that's one element here of all this that I think is going to be a very interesting dynamic, being that the alleged events that Terry Rozier is being indicted for were already investigated by the NBA, and he was cleared of wrongdoing. In this press conference today, though, the FBI has said that they have evidence that Terry Rozier received direct reward $200,000 in his home for information that he provided to a co-conspirator. So all of that is going to be very, very interesting to follow, because as Jumanji85 asks, would Rozier's contract come off the Heat's books? There is certainly a scenario in play here where if he's found fully guilty, that the league could void Terry Rozier's contract, and it could inadvertently end up providing Miami with some type of salary cap relief. But I think we're way too early to get to that point in any terms of definitive answer for you. But back to the Portland side of this, Klein wants to know, why Splitter for head coach? Why not anyone outside? To my understanding from talking to people around the situation, there were two internal candidates. Nate Bjorkgren, who is the former Indiana Pacers head coach, a longtime assistant in Toronto, who was the lead lieutenant to Nick Nurse when the Raptors won the title in 2019. He was the interim head coach for Portland at times a year ago. But there was just ultimately more momentum for Tiago Splitter. And Tiago Splitter came to Portland this season after time with Brooklyn, but most recently he was the head coach of Paris basketball, which also produced Tuomas Isalo, the current head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies. And Splitter has real head coaching experience of late, and is someone who, I mean, he won a championship of Paris basketball, as you're seeing on the screen right now. And he also is, of course, a big man with a lot of influence and teaching ability for Portland's major stable of big men right now, highlighted by Donovan Clingan and Yang Hansen, in addition to other players down the roster. But for now, we're going to wait more information from the league, from this FBI probe, and from the actors involved before we talk more in detail about this. So come back for next week's edition of our NBA Insider live stream notebook to touch on the latest out of what was an earth-shattering, major rumble across the sports world today, stemming from Portland to Florida. Jay Bacon 125 wants to know, what's the update on LeBron? And that takes us to today's second topic of LA's looming injuries, because while it was super apparent on Tuesday night that Luka Doncic and this era of Lakers basketball being the Luka Doncic era, with LeBron on the sidelines, not really acting up at all. There were plenty of Twitter detectives and investigators zooming in on LeBron on the sideline with not so much as a clap or an applaud. He walked right off the floor. I mean, him and Steph Curry have this, of course, decorated history together, and I was watching to see what their type of post-game meetup, handshake, bro hug situation would be, and there was none of that. LeBron walked right off and right into the locker room, and we have seen plenty of reporting from ESPN about LeBron taking a patient approach here and wanting to evaluate the Lakers roster. The Lakers roster clearly is lacking a LeBron James. They had a tremendous Herculean effort from Luka Doncic. Austin Reeves played well. Deandre Ayton, I think, brought a suboptimal performance for his opening debut in a Lakers regular season jersey. Just 10 points and 6 rebounds. And I don't know how much of a legitimate, upper echelon starting caliber production DeAndre Ayton still has in his capacity. To get him off of his $30 million contract onto a discount deal in Los Angeles after his buyout in Portland was certainly, on a cap sheet standpoint, a win for the Lakers to get a starting center on that type of number. But I can tell you, we're going to touch on the aftermath of the rookie scale contract extensions that were and were not later down in today's show. I think from Walker Kessler to Jalen Duren to every other center that's going to hit the open market next year. The fact that the Lakers are set to have cap space, agents and rival teams are looking at the Lakers as not having found their center of the future. Deandre Ayton is not by any stretch the, big man pick and roll partner for Luka Doncic for the next decade. And if he continues to perform as just an average replacement level starting center, that situation I think is only going to be continued to be looked at around the league as something for this offseason to be addressed. And players who are big men, agents of big men, are going to be hoping that they could potentially be the benefactor of that undetermined situation, because Ayton is the big man for now, but we'll see how things ultimately unfold throughout the course of this 81 game or the next 81 games of this season. The landline wants to know, is the groin a lingering issue for Luka? I have not heard anything to suggest that this injury is going to sideline Luka for some incredible amount of time or whatnot. I don't think he's going to miss any real time, to my understanding right now, but you don't want your full offensive engine coming up with an injury game one whatsoever. And I do think that the Lakers are going to have to consider managing his workload and overall minutes more so than they probably would have liked if LeBron was healthy and playing 35 minutes a game and what have you, because without him, it's clear that the Lakers are missing a ton of firepower that naturally comes with $50 million of your salary cap on the sideline and LeBron James not being healthy. The injuries to the New York Knicks are abundant as well, and that was the major storyline around Madison Square Garden before New York took on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Karl-Anthony Towns ended up suiting up. He had a double-double, but he did not look his full self. And New York having an injury-plagued front court is something that has been at the forefront of Knicks decision makers dating back to when they even decided to go out and trade for Karl-Anthony Towns. Because if you remember, the injury concerns about Mitchell Robinson, who was New York's starting center for several years before they went out and made the big trade on basically the eve of training camp a year ago, or of opening night a year ago. Training camp, yeah, eve of training camp. It was late September. The Knicks were canvassing the league to try to find center reinforcements behind Mitchell Robinson, and ultimately swung for the fences and got Karl-Anthony Towns. So Mitchell Robinson remains out due to injury as well. Cat played through this quad strain. He says he's hurting. He's already made some kind of veiled comments about not being sure about what his role is moving forward. So the Knicks ultimately held out for a win, but this is a very long year with absolute championship contending aspirations. You could feel it around the building last night that Cleveland and New York know that they are the two overwhelming favorites to compete for the Eastern Conference Championship this year. And same thing with LA, that big picture, that ultimate ceiling is going to rule the day with those two circumstances. Hayden wants to know, why not load manage Cat? And the problem with New York right now is their center depth is just depleted, with both him and Mitch dealing with injuries, and you have Ariel Hockpurdy out there guarding Evan Mobley in space. So that is the one shortcoming of New York's roster. They did sacrifice depth in order to make the deal to bring in Cat by turning Randall and Dante DiVincenzo into Cat. And we've seen how depth benefited both Indiana and Oklahoma City throughout their playoff runs. That's something a lot of teams talked about in their roster building construction this past summer. And it's something that I think will definitely be a concern for New York moving forward. And a lot of their attention in the back of their roster was put on wing and guard depth. I wonder now if there is a point where they'll get to looking at having more reinforcements in the front court as well. Bucket the Beast wants to know, this isn't technically a story, but DJ Edgecombe is elite. Will he get an uptick in minutes? What does the league think about him already? After one game scoring 34 points and tying Ben Simmons' career record of made three-pointers, I'd say Philadelphia is pretty damn excited. I think for now, he's already a starter and he's already playing major minutes, so I wouldn't expect much more to change. I think, if anything, in Philadelphia, how farther along Joel Embiid can get in his conditioning and his physicality will be important. And when Paul George comes back, I think that will just add continued spacing for both Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey to get downhill. To our next item of today's business, Dyson Daniels came out a big winner, signing a 4-year, $100 million extension with the Atlanta Hawks. This was a bit of a surprise, I'd say, around the league because word got around that his agent, Daniel Moldovan, who represented Josh Giddey this summer through his restricted free agency as well, another Australian, was more around the 150 ballpark that Jalen Suggs signed a year ago. And from my conversations with various people around the situation, the Hawks, up until that final weekend, they were not willing to go on a 5-year structure north of 5 years and $115 million. I think at a certain point, to my understanding, they got up to 125. But if you're Dyson Daniels and you really do believe that you have an untapped ceiling, a defensive player of the year type ceiling after finishing second in that voting and winning most improved, it definitely is sensible to take a 4-year deal as opposed to a 5-year deal at an average annual value of 25 that you believe is below your ultimate earning potential. So it makes sense to $100 million for a 22-year-old who before last year, despite how good a year it was in New Orleans, was really struggling to find his footing as an NBA player. $100 million is just way too much money to not take, in my opinion. And it's an absolute score for, again, a 22-year-old who will come back out into free agency in 2031 as 26 years old with a massive opportunity and potential. Making up new words here for another huge contract that could eclipse $200 million. What does it mean for Trae? That is what Atlanteans wants to know. And to be honest, I don't think it really means anything for Trae because all of Atlanta's negotiating and their hard lines they were drawing were both to reward Dyson, but also to not overspend and maintain some future flexibility, and knowing that Kristaps Porzingis is on an expiring contract and he's going to be up for a new deal, and knowing that Trae Young, if he has a deal, a season that he likes, he's going to opt out and be looking for big money this summer as well. That's been the plan all along for Trae Young. We've talked about that on this show here. I've written about it on the Stein line, my joint Substack effort with the Hall of Famer Mark Stein, about how Trae Young and the Hawks have kind of had an understanding all along that he is going to play out this year, being that he's no longer a set it and forget it max contract player, but he truly believes as a perennial all-star contender and candidate that he has every opportunity playing with Kristaps Porzingis, with Jalen Johnson back healthy, with Dyson another year older and stronger, and Zachary Ricochet another year older and stronger, and new additions like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Luke Kennard and what have you, that Atlanta is more positioned than ever before to be a true playoff team with Trae Young orchestrating. And he thinks he can bet on himself and his play can turn him into a really another big recipient of a massive contract moving forward. So I don't think this impacts Trae at all. I think the only thing that will impact Trae in his next contract is going to be his play on the court and how well Atlanta does overall. Christian Braun did sign a 5-year, $125 million deal with Denver to stick around with the Nuggets. And I think the difference here between Braun and Daniels is that Christian Braun doesn't have the ceiling in Denver to emerge as anything more than the 4th best player on this team right now. But he is absolutely the 4th best player on this team and a super integral piece of a team that took the reigning champion Thunder to Game 7 in the second round of the playoffs a year ago. He's a very close friend to Nikola Jokic. They've trained together in the offseason. And once Denver got up to $25 million in average annual value, this deal was going to get done. More so because the Nuggets also don't really have any path from a cap standpoint to replace Christian Braun if he were to get an offer sheet next summer at $30 million plus that would have put the Nuggets over the tax, which is something they're trying to avoid next year. From all my conversations, Denver absolutely wants to not be a taxpayer for as long as they can and as often as they can, even though they have Nikola Jokic still playing at the peak of his powers. The Polish Hammer wants to know, did MPJ leaving help get this done? I'd say in some capacity, yeah, because Christian Brown is far more important to this team with MPJ out the door than otherwise, but he's also really, as much as Peyton Watson and Julian Strother and Jalen Pickett have shown flashes and signs of contributing in the playoffs, Christian Brown is really the one young piece on this team of late that is absolutely hit as a bona fide rotation player that can win championship basketball games. And his shooting, his two-way play, his strong defense is so important for what Denver does. They could not afford to lose him. I think that's just the number one bottom line. Losing MPJ or sending him out the door made him more vital. But just independent of all that, Christian Brown is such an important piece to Denver, probably even more important than he would be anywhere else. I don't think that even in Christian Brown's best scenario this year, I don't think another team would have come out of the woodwork and paid Christian Brown to be their second or third best player at this juncture in time. Denver knew that as well, but he might be the best qualified player to be the fourth option in this Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon lineup that also has Cam Johnson now in Michael Porter Jr.'s place. Our last item for today's show, there was no extension for Tari Eason, and there was reporting from ESPN's Brian Windhorst that I have since confirmed that the Rockets did offer Tari Eason a 4-year structure above $100 million, but not all of that was guaranteed. There were injury exceptions that were certainly going to be a part of that if he were to take it. I don't know the specifics. I was not told the specifics, but I can absolutely confirm that Tari Eason was offered above $100 million over a 4-year structure, and that there would have been injury protections that would have made a lot of that non-guaranteed with the opportunity for him to have that money guaranteed down the line. So for Tari, I think the most interesting aspect of this to me, if you watch the season opener against OKC, he came right out and stumbled. And a lot of the reason why teams like Denver and Atlanta and Portland with Shaedon Sharpe want to get extensions done is because they want to eliminate the possibility of a player pressing and stressing and worrying about what this whole season can do for their earning potential for next year. In Detroit, for example, Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey are both, to my understanding, optimistic about how their best year is ahead of them, and they have an opportunity to go out and earn a lot of money. But with Tari, I think already he's someone who is not at the top of their rotation. There's a competitive roster, structure with a lot of wings on that team. Dorian Finney-Smith didn't play in the opener. So will he be able to put this kind of behind him and move forward and just focus on the task at hand and let his play do the talking and not press about it? That'll be an important factor. He was not capable of doing that opening night, but it was just opening night. Maybe there was some first game jitters and what have you, but for now, I think that's something that is going to be top of mind in Houston moving forward. Always Right wants to know, can they still get one done or do they have to wait until after the season? The deadline is over. The deadline for rookie scale extensions was the night before the regular season started, and now he will be a restricted free agent. He will be a free agent next summer, and the Rockets will have every opportunity to match. Our last question here, Great Dane wants to know, do we think he wants more, or is that the Rockets don't want to pay over $100 million? I think, from my understanding, the Rockets just know, the whole league knows that Tari has had some type of injury struggles throughout his career, and they wanted to protect themselves on the back end, similar to how New Orleans wanted to protect themselves with Zion. He hasn't had that big of an injury concern, but he's had some injury stuff throughout his tenure that I think gave the Rockets some pause before awarding a fully guaranteed salary structure compared to really anything else. So that will do it for today's show. We had a ton of news and notes to talk about, and we will have more for you next Thursday. Actually, no, we're coming to you on Tuesday, I believe, next week. But we'll get you the time, we'll get you the place. No matter what, when we're here, we'll be bringing you all the latest news and notes from around the NBA on our next NBA Insider video live stream notebook right here on the Bleacher Report app. See ya.